Hello, I'm the Anime Viewer 66, and today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite animes, Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! is, well, a part of what I call the big four of my childhood. The reason I call it that is because we all know the big three now, Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, but when I was a kid, there were four individual shows that I used to watch almost religiously, and that was Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Digimon, and Beyblade. Today we're going to be looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm going to go through this generation by generation. And so, let us begin. Now, before I start with all the other seasons being from the first one all the way up to Zexal, I would like to say that there is actually one that came out before all of them. It was simply known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Zero. Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, whatever. This anime, which I have not actually seen the anime, I've only read parts of the manga, but from what I can tell was a dark, gritty anime that had a much more, shall we say, greedy undertone about sort of how dark this show could really get. You thought the Shadow World and the Mind Crush thing was kind of creepy? Oh, you need to read the Season 0 manga because it can get all sorts of freaky. Yeah, not to mention the fact that Yugi in this is a total psychopath, but it still has a bunch of, how should I say this, loyal fans to it. I personally don't like it all that much because I'm more to the regular Yu-Gi-Oh! But I still do see how many could like it, considering how it is more dark, more edgy, but it's just not in my taste. But I understand that a lot of people do like the show. Next up is the very first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! That came to America. Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself was, well, a pretty much ingenious marketing ploy. Think about it. You have a card game that people play in the show, and that's how they save the universe, and then you can sell those cards to the kids to play as their favorite characters, or pretend to be their favorite characters when they play. It is ingenious, and you can get different cards from different decks to make the best deck ever. They have entire tournaments over this kind of thing. I'm going to say this, I'm in high school right now, about to graduate, but even my friends, we have started in the last year getting back into the game, and like all the way from our grade to being seniors and the lower 7th graders, all of us play the game, and it is like awesomeness. It's an ingenious marketing ploy, playing on the fact that you can actually have the cards that they're playing in the show. As for the show itself, like I said before, the big three of my childhood, Digimon, Beyblade, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I always felt that Yu-Gi-Oh! Had sort of a, I suppose you could say, darker version to something like Pokemon. Maybe not so much to Digimon, because that could kind of get dark. And Beyblade, not so much all at times, but it could still be sort of dark. But Yu-Gi-Oh! I felt was sort of the darker version. Now, obviously not as dark as its ancestor Season 0, but still pretty dark at times. The fact that the Shadow World and the whole thing about the ancient pharaoh and the mystery of trying to figure out the pharaoh's past was fairly interesting. And compared to something like Pokemon that has a more basic plot, Yu-Gi-Oh! With its, even though it had at times basic plots of go to this enemy, defeat this one, then go to this enemy and defeat this one, it had something more of a story-driven thing than Pokemon did, of simply going from episode to episode, having to meet a new trainer and all that, and learning a lesson. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was just, yeah, I'm kicking butt and taking names, and I'm also going to find out what in the world's going on with the Pharaoh. A good season, and probably to most people, one of the best. Now, let's take a look at some of the others. The generation after that was Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, this is where people start to go down in liking the show. What I mean by that is people start to dump on the other seasons because they sort of go outside the original thing of being about the Pharaoh and Yugi and Taya and Joey and all of their favorite characters. But I will say, GX, above all the other sequels to come after Yu-Gi-Oh!, is by far my favorite. I know there's a lot of complaints with this series, considering the fact that they say, well, the main character, Jaden Yugi, he's annoying. Or they'll say, well, the whole school is ridiculous. Or maybe they'll even say, we can't take the villains seriously. I mean, yeah, I will say, once you've seen Merrick and Seto Kaiba Yeah, it is kind of hard to get better villains than those two. I do personally, even though Soto Kaiba wasn't always the villain, but you get my point. But what I do like about Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is one thing. It was a school where you went to learn how to duel. That was it. There was no other like English or anything like that. It was just a school to duel in. I thought that was awesome. I can't help it. I came home from school and was like hated school. I hated it. And to see these guys just dueling their hearts out and being able to go to school to do what they like instead of having to drag through the depressingness that is real school, I was like, yes, I want that school. Also, the whole thing about Jaden Yugi being an annoying character, Jaden Yugi, although I will agree can be annoying at times, I felt his personality was more or less very interesting. While in the first season, everything was mainly taken as very serious, and a duel was usually the manner of someone's life. Life and death struggles were in the balance. The fate of the entire universe could be at the balance at some points. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, even though you do get that a lot, Jaden Yugi is more of a laid-back kind of character. And basically saying to all those that take it too seriously, hey, it's just a game, it's just to have fun. I can respect that. Alright, I would say, even though there is a lot of hate for this particular one, I think it's pretty smart and a pretty good story overall. Even though I did find the Ojamas to be a bit annoying at times, but overall, good characters, good story, and fairly good writing, but I wouldn't go as far as saying it's the best. Next up is Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Okay, I know what everyone's thinking, and I thought the same thing the first time I heard this title. Yes, everyone made the brawl joke. Come on, you know you made the joke. It was way too easy a pun, and they should have never called it that. But, without a doubt, it is going back to a more darker series. The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Zero was very dark. Yu-Gi-Oh! The ones that we got was not really that dark, but it still had those dark undertones. Then it went to a more friendly version with Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and then with 5Ds, it got back to a more dark thing, with the whole thing about the satellite and Yusei's past and his father and all that. It got pretty dark. Personally, I do think this is an okay series, even though I think the idea of dueling on a motorcycle sounds kind of stupid. But it's okay. It's not bad. It's definitely not the worst. It's okay. I won't praise it. I won't hate on it. It is simply okay. And now we come to the unholy spawn that is known simply as Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Yes, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Before I get into the actual thing about this, I would like to point this out. Is Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal the worst season or series of the thing so far? Yes. Is Zexal the worst art so far? And that's saying something. Yes. And finally, are the characters in this one the most annoying ever? Oh, you bet. Yes, this anime is truly a terrible piece of garbage that needs to burn very slowly and painfully. Now that I've said all that, you probably want to know why. Well, put simply, it's this. The main character in any of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, at least I could say this for them, they were interesting and pretty cool. The original Yugi, the Pharaoh himself, he always seemed to be in control. He had that suave, that debonair attitude to him, like he always knew what to do. In the next one, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Jaden Yugi, even though he was a bit of a goof-off, he still knew how to play the game. He was still awesome at it. And even though the rest of the people were like taking it way seriously, he was just like, it's a game, I'm going to have fun. If you want to over-obsess on it, you can. But I'm super cool, so who cares? That was his attitude towards it, and I love that. Then we get to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds with Yusei. Yusei was much more of a serious duelist. I think they tried to make him a bit too much like the Pharaoh and not his own character. But at least he was interesting. This new character, I don't even remember his name, he's so annoying. Oh, I only watched 3 episodes because I felt if I watched any more, my brain would melt out of my ears. Now, before I go to this, I would like to simply say this. This kid, who apparently doesn't even know how to duel his way out of a paper bag, to win his individual duels, he must take advice from a little spirit, because they all have little spirits in these shows, that must tell him how to duel. This is fine. If you want to go that route, fine. I have no problems with it. It's not like they didn't do a similar thing in the original series. But at least make it where the two don't fight and bicker all the bloody time. Let me point this out. When the original Pharaoh transformed into the Pharaoh, he transformed into the Pharaoh. When Yugi transformed into the Pharaoh, it was the Pharaoh in control. He was dueling. Case closed. And in GX, it was always Yusei not Yusei, sorry, I'm getting characters mixed up. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it was always Jade and Yugi who was dueling. He was awesome at it, and therefore, he was winning. In 5Ds, with Yusei, also, always was dueling, always was cool. The only time he ever really needed some help was a few times from his teammates, and also with the Crimson Dragon when he needed the really big things to go down. But in this one, he needs a little help from the little blue spirit thing every single draw of a card. And the worst part is, he doesn't even take the advice that the blue guy gives him, even though most of the time it's right. Yes, and so we get to hear them bicker and argue and bicker and argue, and we as an audience are supposed to find that endearing and funny. I want you to think on that for a minute. The people who wrote this show think that you're supposed to find this funny and endearing. That's how smart they think you are. They put your level of intelligence on finding that garbage to be funny. I personally take that as an insult. I'm not going to give ratings to these individual seasons, and I wasn't even going to give a rating to this one, but I decided, who cares, I'm going to go ahead and give it one anyway. This particular season, while all the other seasons were good, and I'm not going to bother on giving them ratings because they would be fairly high, this particular season, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, deserves nothing more than my lowest score ever, -500. Why -500? Because 600 is just tacky. Alright, I am the Anime Viewer 66. Thank you and good night.